Shchayach for inviting me to give a shiur b'inyan Gula Moshiach. So before we start, tonight is already, we just finished Yud Ches Cheshvan, we're already going into Yud Tes Cheshvan, Erev Chav Cheshvan. So of course it's appropriate to start with the Maisa of the Rebbe Rashab. Famous story. It's important really to say over stories meduyik with all the pratim, so I hope I don't mess it up, but the famous story, you have to understand that in the olden days, today there's so much waste and so much, we don't care. We throw out good things and it's just unbelievable the amount that we have. But Amal, if you wanted to wear clothing, you went to the store, you went to the market, you bought some material, you paid for however it was measured, every yard, every inch. It was very expensive. You went to a tailor, he cut it for you. If there was leftover material, you saved it. It could be a patch, you could use it for something else. It wasn't like today, extra buttons come, you throw them out. Everything was very, very valuable. So there's a famous story with Rebbe Rashab when he was 4 or 5 years old, that the Rebbe Rashab, the tailor came back to the house, and there was some extra material, and he kept it in his pocket, and the Rebbe Rashab innocently, as a little kid, pulled it out of his pocket, and the tailor was extremely, extremely embarrassed. And afterwards, the Rebbe Rashab's mother, Rebbe Rivka, told the Rebbe Rashab, told him off, gave him musar, that he caused another yid to zich vershemen, to be so embarrassed. And the Rebbe Rashab really, really took it to heart. The Rebbe Rashab cried about it, and he was upset about it. And weeks later, or days later, whatever again, it's important to say b'diuk, but I don't remember the exact pratim, but a while later, he went into his father, the Rebbe Marash, and a little kid, he's 4 or 5 years old. And he asked the Rebbe Marash for a tikkun for what happened. And the Rebbe Rashab asked him to say over what happened, and the Rebbe Rashab said that I'm not going to tell you who it happened with, because it's bad enough that I already caused habanas panim, I caused another yid to be so embarrassed, now I'm going to do lashon hara also. So he told over to his father the story without saying who the tailor was. And from there we learned extreme sensitivity that the Rebbe Rashab had at the age of 4 or 5 years old to another yid, to be careful in 2 things: sigh not to speak lashon hara about another yid, and sigh not to cause shame and embarrassment to another yid. We know that when you cause somebody shame or you cause somebody to be embarrassed, it's a very, very horrible experience for the other person, and the same as if you talk lashon hara about them. So in Tafshin Lamed Vav, exactly 50 years ago, and it was the sikha that, Lahak gives that every week, a chelik of the sikha. So the sikha, most of it is mugga, but there's the bilti mugga that they gave out this week, where the Rebbe says that that was a psichas at sinner. This story of the Rebbe Rashab is a psichas at sinner, and the responsibilities are mechanchim. That right now we're in a generation where we're able to teach 4 and 5 year olds to be that sensitive for another yid that they should be so careful, and it should bother them if they're mevayish chas v'shalom another yid, and that they should be super careful with lashon hara. And because it was bothered the Rebbe Rashab so much and the whole story, it's a raya that today we could teach this to Talmidim, and it was Shnas Chinuch and Tavshel Lamed Vav, and the Rebbe says therefore the mechanchim must be mechanech the kids in such a way. So what does this have to do with Shiur Inyan Gula Moshiach? So really I prepared another shiur, and hopefully you all have time, because I think it'll be a geschmack shiur in Mirz Hashem. But for 2 reasons I wanted to bring this story. Number 1, we're going into Chav Cheshvan, we have to say a story of the Rebbe Rashab. Number 2, because at the end of the day I can't take my mind off something that happened in Eretz Yisrael, and I don't want to elaborate, but I'm sure many of you know about it. It was a Bachur who passed away, and it's extremely, extremely painful, at least, what the rumors are. Obviously, we're not judging anybody. We're not going to talk lashon hara now. But at least from what the rumors are and from Asmeret, I think we all have to take something to heart. I personally knew that boy. He was a shliach in South Korea, and like many shluchim around the world, and maybe some of you here, when you're little kids and you grew up in the middle of nowhere, your parents brought you to Crown Heights, and we took you into Ali Torah. We have an open door policy. We always take in guests and shluchim to come experience what it's like to be in a cheder. And he was a Taira Zissa boy who happened to be a genius as well. He knew the whole Tanya Bal Peh, and he used to come correct me on the grammar on my signs. I had signs about a mifzah or something. You come very respectfully and say, I think you misspelled that word. And it's just, again, if what they're saying is true, and I don't know, and I'm not here to judge, I'm not here to say what happened, but I know that you know. But if what they're saying is true, just the amount of pain that he lived through, caused by his friends, is just unbearable. To the extent it was that unbearable. And if we're talking about 4 or 5 year olds who have to have an achdus to be sensitive to another yid, how much more so when you're 20, when you're 18, 19, however old you are, 20 years old, you have enough seichel, you're already developed, you're already a bar das since you're 13, you could understand that the smallest comment and the smallest WhatsApp post and the smallest exclusion and the smallest shtach and whatever it may be could really cause pain to another yid, and it's our responsibility to be very, very sensitive to everybody around us. What's the connection to Yanagil Moshiach? Because through ahavas Yisrael, Moshiach is going to come. It's that simple. The whole reason why we call Yanagil Moshiach is because the Rebbe said it's a derech yeshar. You're going to learn about a Moshiach will come. The Rebbe also said that if you have ahavas Yisrael, Moshiach will also come. The Churban ultimately was because of sinas chinam. So if you have ahavas chinam, Moshiach will come. So I wanted to start with that in honor of hate to call it, in honor of current events and in honor of bringing Moshiach and connecting to the Rebbe Rashab. We must all be very sensitive one to another. So when I was asked to give a Moshiach shiur in Zal, so of course I had flashbacks. I learned 3 years in this beautiful Zal, Shiur Aleph, Beis, and Dalid, before it was split. And we used to have a Moshiach shiur, also once a week, a very big Moshiach shiur, once by the Bachrim, once by a guest speaker. And I remember one of the shiurim that, I remember who gave the shiur. His name is, I forgot his first name. His last name is Mata, so from France. He gave a shiur. He gave over a very geschmack pilpul from Rabbi Yehoshua Lustig. And I remember Pasha learning, it was set up differently. It was during the big lunch break. And so I was invited to give a shiur knowing Moshiach and Alter Zalma. You know what? I still remember that shiur. Obviously not all the details. I had to go find it and make copies and learn it and prepare it, which I did, and I hope to give it over to you. But I remember that shiur. I remember I had a very tremendous, hana, geschmack in this shiur. It's actually connected to yesterday's parsha. So this was the shiur that I chose to give. So the shiur is from Rabbi Yehoshua Lustig. Rabbi Yehoshua Lustig lived approximately 400 years ago. So in the G'dayli Acharayim is a huge guy and a huge paisek. On Shulchan Aruch he has Kreisiu Placey on one of the volumes of Shulchan Aruch, and slipping my mind, the other volume it's called a different name. And then he has a famous sefer called Yaris Dvash. And most prints of Yaris Dvash, in the back there's a sefer, or sometimes it's a print alone. It's called Divrei Yonasan. And Divrei Yonasan, it's more drush and pulpulim in the Indian of drush. Maybe not the usual style of what you're used to learning in yeshiva and the regular style that you learn, and not the regular style that you're probably used to learning in L'chut HaSichas. But it's from Rabbi Yehoshua Lustig, and it's on Inyan Digul Mashiach. So buckle up. The thing is, if you're going to miss like one chelik in the shiur, you're not going to get the whole punchline. And it's very geschmack when you get to the end. So for like 15, 20 minutes, I think, let me say 20 minutes. 20 minutes, you focus, you buckle up, and you pay attention. And Mirz Hashem, I will try to make it very clear to everybody. And if you'd like, I'm not going to read it b'fnim, but if you'd like to look inside and follow along, you're more than welcome to, and after you can look and see it in the words of the Divrei Yonasan himself. So the Divrei Yonasan starts off as follows. There's going to be like the way I took, as I was learning it, I kind of like broke it down into steps, took notes for myself. I have it down where here like 23 steps, and then we get to the answer, which is the best part. So I should say Bagdama, there's different styles in learning. There's more, the Rebbe talks about this in Sichos, there's different styles in learning, and there's more the Litvische style where you learn, but Be'ilin and Megribelzich, and if you don't understand something, you're Ma'ayin Tiffer in the Sugya. Then there's a Pilpul style in learning where it's not about being Ma'ayin more in this Sugya. It's like if you know another Gemara, you know another Taisus, you know another thing, and according to that, and according to that, and according to that, it all now makes sense and comes back together. So this is much, much more in the Pilpul Kav of learning. So in Chumash state, the Vayas Avram Mishta Gadol, Avram made a Mishta Gadol b'yom higamos Yitzchak b'nai, when Yitzchak turned 2. So Medrash, it says as follows, and it's actually brought down in Gemara Maseches Pesachim Daf Kuf Yud Tes Amud Beis. It says as follows, that when there's going to be La'asir Lavai, this is Shiur Yanagil Mashiach, right? So La'asir Lavai, we know there's going to be the big Su'udah, the Su'udah Salav Yasan. So when the La'asir Lavai is going to come, it says Yasa Kadosh Baruch Hu Su'udah Tzadikim. Hashem is going to make a Su'udah for Tzadikim. And after they're going to eat, it's going to come time to bench. So imagine Moshiach comes now, and we go to the Su'udah Salav Yasan, the Su'udah of Tzadikim, and there's a whole beautiful meal, and there's a Shara Bar and Salav Yasan, and now it's time to bench. Who's going to bench? So the Gemara, Maseches Pesachim, the Medrash on this pasuk says that first they're going to give the kais to Avram Avinu. They're going to offer Avram to bench. You ever go to a meal, they say, no, you want to bench? The guy says, no, I'll give it to somebody else, right? So this is what's actually going to happen. They give it to Avram Avinu, and Avram Avinu is going to say, Ein ani ra'y levarich. I'm not able to bench. Why can't I bench? L'fi sheyatza mimeni Yishmael, because I had Yishmael, and Yishmael wasn't exactly a tzaddik, and I'm not ra'i that I should be the one to do the birchas hamazon at the Suda Moshiach. So he's going to say, Ein ani ra'y levarich. Then eventually they're going to pass the kais down to David HaMelech, and David HaMelech is going to say, Lina levarich. For me, it's a past yod that Zolkana mentioned. Like it says, Kais Yeshois Esav, Hashem Hashem Ekra, David HaMelech says he's going to be the one who's going to do Kais Yeshois Esav. So that's what's going to happen. And Ritz Hashem will happen tonight. So Frektich, the Shaila, Rabbi Yehoshua asks, why does it have to happen this way? First, we're going to give it to Avram. Avram's going to say, no, I can't do this one. Ein ani ra'y levarich. Then we're going to go to David HaMelech, and then he's going to say, Lina levarich. Let's just give it straight to David HaMelech. We know what's going to be, so let's just give it straight to David HaMelech. Why is this going to have to play out? So here's the answer. You're not going to understand the answer yet, but here's the punchline of the answer. The answer that Rabbi Yehoshua is going to give now is as follows. That the only reason why Sipas for David HaMelech to bench, for him to say Lina levarich, is only after we try Avram, and Avram says, Ein ani ra'y levarich. Only once we hear that from Avram, now it's okay for David HaMelech. So that's the answer. In other words, why do we have to go to Avram first, then David HaMelech? Because if we would go straight to David HaMelech, we also have a problem. There's actually a problem with David HaMelech being the one to bench. We're going to run into a challenge, and I'll tell it to you in a second. But first we have to understand how the answer is going to work. This is the answer. That if we're going to go straight to David HaMelech, there's an issue. But Dafka, we're going to go to Avram first, and Avram's going to say, Ein ani ra'y levarich. Then David HaMelech is going to be able to say, aha, for you, Ein ani ra'y levarich. For me, it's Lina levarich. I could do it, and David HaMelech is going to actually be the one to bench. So why? So how does this happen? So we're going to have to be maktim now, like 9 different Gemaras, Taisvis, Mefarshim, you're going to see. But let's first talk about David HaMelech for a reason, for a quick minute. David HaMelech also has, obviously this is explained in Primus HaTorah and Chassidus, but Bepashtos, David HaMelech also has a chet. David HaMelech has the story with Bathsheba, and David HaMelech sent Uriah Chiti, he sent Uriah to get killed in the front line. So David HaMelech killed Uriah Chiti in order to have Bathsheba. So David HaMelech also has a problem. So if we go to David HaMelech first, David HaMelech's not able to bench because he has the story with Uriah. Uncomfortable story. But if we're going to go to Avram first, and he's going to say, Ein ani ra'y levarich, then the story of Uriah is not an issue anymore, and then it's going to be Lina levarich. How is that going to happen? How does that translate to that? So here's where you have to buckle up. So the first thing we need to learn is that there's a machlokes, a maseches avodah zarah. Everything here is going to seem random, and you're going to see it all come together. There's a machlokes in, and you can follow along again. There's a machlokes in maseches avodah zarah. When did Yisrael join Bnei Yisrael? And by the way, Yisrael, when he came, he also brought Moshe Rabbeinu's wife and children, because Moshe Rabbeinu, when he left Midian to go to Mitzrayim, eventually he sent his wife and children back. There's a medrash about that as well. But Tzipora and Menashe and Gershon, they were not by Mitzrayim. I'm sorry, what did I say? Yeah, I said the name's wrong, yeah. So, Tzipora was back home with her father. So whenever Yisrael came, we're talking about Yisrael coming together with Tzipora and the 2 sons. Why is it slipping my mind? What are the names of the 2 boys? Gershon and Eliezer. I said Menashe, sorry. Okay. So, when did Yisrael come? It's a famous machlokes. It's a machlokes, a Maseches avodah zarah, Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph. There's 2 opinions. Man da Amar Yisrael Kaidem Matan Torah Ba. Yisrael came when the Yidden were in the Midbar before Matan Torah. And there's a man da Amar that says Yisrael Lacha Matan Torah Ba. There's a machlokes. Fine. Now, so Frek Taisvis, the Taisvis there Maseches avodah zarah, he has a kasha. He has a kasha on the man da Amar that says Yisrael came Lacha Matan Torah. He has a kasha from a Gemara Maseches Yevamos. So let's for a minute go to Maseches Yevamos, and then we'll explain Taisvis' kasha. Let's go learn Maseches Yevamos. In Maseches Yevamos it says, Shloisha dvarim asa Moshe midaitai. There were 3 things that Moshe Rabbeinu did on his own. It wasn't a direct tzivui from Hashem. On his own, he made a cheshbon that this is the right thing to do, and all 3 of them, the Braisa says, it's a Braisa. All 3 of them, Hashem was maskim to him, and we learn out from a pasuk where we see that he was maskim. One of the things that Moshe Rabbeinu did midaitai, that it says that he was peirash min isha. He didn't go back home to be with his wife. And Moshe Rabbeinu, why did Moshe Rabbeinu do this midaitai? He made a cheshbon. Ma'adach yidinu met Hashem one single time, but Matan Torah, the Eibusha gave a mitzvah hafrasha that everybody should be separated from their wives, and there should be the shleishis me'agdala, there should be hafrasha, because they have to go meet with the Melech Malachim Lachem Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they have to be tahar. So if all the Yidden had to do the mitzvah of Rasha for 3 days to meet Hashem once, me, who I can meet Hashem at any given moment, I should always be separated and stay out of my house and be separated from my wife. So Moshe Rabbeinu on his own made a cheshbon that he should be peirash min isha. That's what it says in the Brisa Maseches Yevamos. And the Gemara, the Brisa says, and how do we know that Kadosh Baruch Hu was maskim v'skimai, that Kadosh Baruch Hu was maskim to the das of what Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to do? Because after Matan Torah, it says a clear pasuk in Chumash. If you're a Baal Kairi, you know this pasuk by heart. It says, "Lech amar lahem shuvu lachem la'ohel lechem va'ata poi amoidi madi." Hashem told Moshe to tell the Yidden, everybody can go back to their oil. Shuvu lachem la'ohel lechem va'ata poi amoidi madi. Moshe Rabbeinu, you stay here with me. So we see that Eibusha ended up being maskim to Moshe, who wanted to stay and be peirish min isha, and he did that on his own. So that's the Gemara in Yevamos. So now back to our Gemara. Maseches Avodah Zarah, where there was a machlekes of Yisrael Kaidem Matan Torah or Yisrael La'achar Matan Torah. So the Tosfos has a kasha on the opinion that says La'achar Matan Torah, and Tosfos says, according to that, how are you going to understand how are you going to understand the Gemara in Yevamos? If Yisrael came before Matan Torah, so it means Tzipora came before Matan Torah, then that whole story of Moshe Rabbeinu Peirish min Isha makes sense. But if Yisrael came La'achar Matan Torah, which means Tzipora came La'achar Matan Torah, how does that brisa work well with this man Amr that says that Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah? That's Tosfos' kasha. Tosfos gives his own answer. If you want to learn it, you could go there. And again, it's Maseches Avodah Zarah, quoting the Gemara from Yevamos. But Rabbi Yehoshua says the lechura, there's a machlekes tanaim going on over here, and this Amayra that holds that Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah, he's in good company. What's the machlekes? There's a machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel have a machlekes about the very first mitzvah in the Torah of pru uravu, that you have to have children. So according to Beis Shammai, you only have to have sons, and according to Beis Hillel, you dafka have to have a ben ubas. You have to have a ben ubas. And according to Beis Shammai, you're yaitz the mitzvah with boys, and according to Beis Hillel, you're dafka only yaitz the mitzvah. A man is only yaitz the mitzvah if he gets married. And Bishtar benches him, side with a son and side with the daughter. So l'chura, shittas Beis Hillel, we could ask the same question: what's pshat in that brisa? According to Beis Hillel, Moshe Rabbeinu only had sons. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't yet yaitz the mitzvah of pru uravu. So how could it be that Kadosh Baruch Hu was his schema daitai to let Moshe Rabbeinu be peirish min isha? He was not yet mekayim the mitzvah of pru uravu. How did Hashem let him stay away from home? So Rabbi Yehoshua tayin is that according to Beis Hillel, who holds that you're only yaitz the mitzvah of pru uravu dafka if you have a ben or bas, according to Beis Hillel, we need to learn pshat of Ata Payim Madi that Tzipora wasn't around anyway. Tzipora was anyway still in Midian. So when the Eibusha told Tzipora of Ata Payim, when the Eibusha tells Moshe Rabbeinu, stay here with me, it's okay, but it's not Hashem's not causing him to refrain from being Mekayim the mitzvah of Pru Uravu and to have a bas. His wife is not here anyway. So the Eibusha could tell him Ata Payim Madi. Okay, so I hope I didn't lose anybody, because let's be masakim. What Rabbi Yehoshua is suggesting thus far is that according to Beis Shammai, that you're yaitz the mitzvah of pru uravu with sons. So according to him, we can learn taka that Yisrael came kaidem Matan Torah. And according to him, the brisa makes sense over there that Moshe Rabbeinu was peirish min isha and Eibusha said Ata Payim Madi. It makes sense because there was no issue with Moshe Rabbeinu being mekayim the mitzvah of pru uravu. But according to Beis Hillel, that you're only mekayim the mitzvah of pru uravu if you have a ben ubas, then we're mukhrach to say that when the Eibusha said V'ata Payim Madi, Tzipora wasn't around anyway, so the Eibusha wasn't causing Moshe Rabbeinu not to be mekayim the mitzvah puravu, which means that Tzipora with Yisrael did not come yet, which means Beis Hillel, who's a Tana, goes according to the opinion that Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah. So we're connecting the machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. If you have to have ben or bas or just banim or ben banim, we're connecting it to the machlokes of Yisrael came kaidem Matan Torah or Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah through that kasha and Tosfos. That's the connection. Now, let's go now to Gemara Maseches Zvachim. A Gemara Maseches Zvachim that connects. This is a straight Gemara. It's not a far pilpul. It's not a far stretch. This is a straight Gemara that connects the machlokes of Yisrael, if he came before Achamat and Torah, to entirely what seems unrelated machlokes. There's a machlokes of a ben noyach. A ben noyach is a guy. A ben noyach who wants to come to the Beis Hamikdash and bring a carbon. What type of carbon is a ben noyach allowed to bring? It's machlokes in Maseches Zvachim. There's two opinions. One opinion holds a ben noyach is allowed to be makriv oilos ushlamim. You're allowed to bring a carbon oilo, which we know goes kulei oilo goes fully up to Hashem. And he's allowed to bring a carbon shlamim, which part of it goes to the Kayin, part to Hashem, part to the Baalim. And a ben noyach can bring both. And there's another opinion, a machlokes, straight up in Maseches Zvachim, a machlokes, another opinion, it says a ben noyach is, only allowed to bring a carbon oilo. A ben noyach can bring only a carbon oilo. That's a machlokes in Gemara. So now the Gemara itself makes this connection. Frek the Gemara, Maseches Zvachim, Frek the Gemara, how could the man the Amar say that a ben noyach is only allowed to be makriv a carbon oilo? We're asking on that man the Amar, the one who says oilo only. How could you say oilo only? V'aksiv v'shteitach v'yikach Yisrael oilo uzvachim. Yisrael brought oilo uzvachim, and Rashi teaches oilo kemashmai. Oilo means a carbon oilo. Zvachim harei elu shlamim. So we see clearly Yisrael was a ben noyach. He wasn't a yid. Yisrael was a ben noyach. He wasn't a yid. And we see that Yisrael was able to bring oila shlamim. So it's a kasha on the man Amr that says that a ben noyach is allowed to bring only a oila. Zakti Gemara, hahu la'achamat and tayreksiv. The Gemara answers that when Yisrael, the man Amr who says that a ben noyach is allowed to bring oila, he defends himself that when it says that Yisrael brought oila shlamim, it's talking about after Matan Torah, and Yisrael was already in his Gayer, and he was already a Yid, and that's why he was allowed to bring oila shlamim. Zakti Gemara, that it's only Hanichelaman Amar that Yisrael came L'achar Matan Torah. But if you're going to say Yisrael came Koydem Matan Torah and he wasn't yet in his Gayer, how are you going to answer the kasha? So the Gemara says, you're right. The person who holds that a ben noyach, hear me out here. The opinion in Maseches Zvachim that holds that a ben noyach is only allowed to be makriv oila. Is only allowed to be makriv oila. He's taka going to hold of the shita that Yisrael came la'achar matan Torah. He was right away in his gayer, so he was a yid. He wasn't ben noyach, and right away he did oilu zvachim, and it's not a problem. But the opinion that holds that a ben noyach is allowed to be makriv oilu shlamim, and he has a raya from Yisrael, because he holds that Yisrael koydem matan Torah, but Yisrael was still a ben noyach, so you have a raya that a ben noyach could be makriv oilu shlamim. But the opinion, again repeating, l'sikum, the opinion that holds that a ben noyach could only bring an oila, he's going to have to hold taka. The Gemara says this, not Rebbeinu Sanaipshit's connection. Gemara. He says that opinion is going to have to hold that if you only bring an oila, Isa state vegin Yisrael that he brought both. Yisrael came la'achar matan Torah, and he was already a yid, and that's why he was able to bring oilo shlamim. So we have now a connection between the machlokes of oilo, if a ben noyach be makar of oilo shlamim to only oila, to the machlokes of Yisrael came before matan Torah, if Yisrael came after matan Torah. Okay, now L'sikum, the man that Omer holds Yisrael came before Matan Torah, ben noyach is makriv oila ushlamim, and the man that Omer who says that ben noyach is makriv only oila, Yisrael came after Matan Torah. Now let's go weiter. Now in Tanakh, there's a very interesting person in Tanakh. He's called Iyov. There's Sefer Iyov. If you ever learned Iyov, or if you learn Maseches Bava Basra, which has a few blot about Iyov, if I remember correctly. So Iyov was a person who was a ben noyach, by the way, and he had a tremendous amount of yisurim that the Eibusher brought on Iyov. And in the Mefarshim, in general, there are two reasons why Iyov had so much yisurim. Two different ideas that are brought down in the Mefarshim. One is because Iyov used to bring only karbones oila, and he didn't bring shlamim, and therefore a carbon oila is kulei Hashem, and a carbon shlamim is not all Hashem. There's also yanika sachitzainim, and the sitra achra takes a yanika from a carbon shlamim, and the sitra achra is upset at Iyov that he only brings carbon oila. He never brings a carbon shlamim. He never feeds them. So therefore, the sitra achra made this kitrug on Iyov, and Iyov had a tremendous amount of suffering because he used to bring only carbon oila. That's one reason it says in Mefarshim. Another reason it says in Mefarshim that the reason why Iyov had so much tsaris is because Iyov was a Gilgal of Terach who served Avodah Zarah, and he came down here to be Mesakin on the Chet of Terach, the father of Avram. That's why Iyov had so much tsaris. So now, 1 second. So now let's look into each one of these answers. We have that each one of these mafarshim, pirushim. We have that Eov only brought a carbon oila, and we have that Eov was being mechaper v'lechet of terach. Let's talk about each one for a minute. Let's talk about the fact that Eov did a problem that he brought a carbon oila. That pshat only works according to the Man Amar that a ben noach is allowed to bring oila and shlamim. And then we can have a kpeda, we can be upset at Eov, why are you bringing only oila? Please bring shlamims also. But according to the Man Amar that a ben noach is only allowed to bring a shlamim, you can't be upset at Eov that he brought only oila. He's only allowed to bring an oila. He had no choice. So this pirush that says that a ben noach, the reason why Eov got punished is because he brought only oila, only works according to the opinion that a ben noach was allowed to bring oila and shlamim, and Eov was refusing to bring shlamim. So what's the reason why Eov had so much pain according to the reason that a ben noach could bring only oila? For ben noach could bring only oila, Eov didn't do anything wrong. So it's according to him that we must have the second reason that a ben noach could bring only oila. So what did Yisrael do wrong? I see I'm losing some chaver. Don't get lost. We're almost there. So according to him, we must say taka the second reason that Eov was a Gilgal of Terach. Fine. Now let's analyze that reason. Is this a good reason that Eov should get so much pain because he's a Gilgal of Terach? We have a problem with that as well. The problem is the Rambam explains the evolution of Avodah Zarah, and the Rambam explains that B'deiros Rishonim, which is referring to Terach, B'deiros Rishonim, they actually were l'shem shamayim niskavnu. They actually really believed in serving Hashem. Elamai, they had a shita. Their shita was the Migdulas Ha'eved Nikar Gdulas Rabbi, that from the greatness of the Eved, you're able to see how great the master is. So therefore, we serve the Shemesh and the Yareach and these Koichavim and these amazing Mazalais and these amazing Avadim of the Eibishter, because if they're so great, you can only imagine how great is Rabbi, their master Hashem. So they were L'Shem Shemaim Neskavin. So according to this, that Eov had to have so much pain, so much sadis, because he had to be mechaper in the chet of Terach. What kind of chet was there? B'deiros Rishonim, they were L'Shem Shemaim Niskavnu, and because they held the Migdulas Ha'eved Nikar Gdulas Rabbi. So why is it such a problem that Terach had such a chet that Eov had to come in mechaper in his chet? It wasn't so bad what he was doing. It was L'Shem Shemaim Niskavnu. So this will depend on a different machlokes. This teretz that we're giving, why Terach's Aveira wasn't such a bad Aveira, because Migdulas Ha'eved Nikar Gdulas Rabbi, will really depend on another machlokes. There's a machlokes in Maseches Bava Basra. Machlokes is as follows: Mar Savar Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav, Umar Savar Ein Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav. If you have a Rav who's present, and you have a Talmud, are you allowed to give the Rav Talmud in front of his Rebbe, or is it considered like a chutzpah? So machlokes, Mar Savar Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav. You're allowed to give kaved to the Talmud B'Makom Harav. Umar Savar Ein Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav. So Memuz Zagin, that according to the opinion that Terach did do a chet, and Eov had to have all this tzaros b'mechaper on the chet, it's going to go according to the opinion from the Gemara over there, Maseches Bava Basra, that Ein Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav. So the whole teretz that they gave kaved to the Eved, because Migdulas Ha'eved Nikar Gdulas Rabbi, doesn't work, because Ein Chelkin Kaved L'Talmud B'Makom Harav, and Terach should have not done that. So Terach did do a chet. One more Gemara, and then we're going to get to the answer. There's one more Gemara. It says, Hashem beirach es Avram bakoil. Hashem benched Avram with bakoil. What does bakoil mean? It's a machlokes. I believe it's Bisham and Mesilel, but it's a machlokes in Gemara. Maybe it's not Bisham and Mesilel. I don't remember. It's a machlokes Bisham and Mesilel that Avram beirach es Avram bakoil. No, it's not. We're going to make the connection in a second. Avram beirach es Avram bakoil. One opinion in the Gemara says that bakoil means that Hashem benched Avram with a daughter, ubakoil shma. Hashem benched Avram. Hashem beirach Avram bakoil. Hashem gave Avram a bracha. He should have a daughter, ubakoil shma. And one opinion is that Hashem beirach Avram bakoil, that Hashem benched Avram, that Yishmael did tshuva. Okay? We finished quoting all the Gemaras and all those Machlaikisin. Just a little recap before we now go to the answer. We spoke about the Machlaikis of if Yisrael came before Matan Torah, Matan Torah. We quoted the Gemara in Yavamis that had that Moshe was Perish Min Isha and Hashem was Maskim. We had Taisvis' Kasha from that Gemara on the Manda Amar. We had Taisvis' Kasha from that Taisvis on the Manda Amar that Yisrael came la'achar. The Manda Amar that Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah. How's that Brisa going to stem? But then we said, it works very well according to Beis Hillel. We have to say that Yisrael Taka wasn't there because otherwise he wasn't yet Mekayim the mitzvah Pru Revus. Hashem only said Vata Payam Madi if Tzipayir and Yisrael still haven't yet arrived. We also spoke about the Machlaikis of Beisham and Beis Hillel to be Mekayim the mitzvah Pru Revu if you have to have sons or a Zachar and a Nekeva. We also spoke about the Machlaikis of a Ben Noach B'Makriv Oilo Shlamim or only Oilo and how it's connected to the Machlaikis of when Yisrael came. We also spoke about the Machlaikis with the two reasons of why Yisrael got punished. Eiv got punished. We also explained that according to the first reason of why Eiv got punished, because he was Makriv Oilos V'Lo Shlamim, only works according to the Manda Amar that he was able to be Makriv Shlamim, and according to the Manda Amar he could only be Makriv Oilo. He did nothing wrong, so we must go to explanation number 2, which is that he was here to be Mechaper in the Chet of Terach. We also explained that Terach didn't really have a Chet because Terach was L'Shem Shemayim Niskavein and Megdulas Ha'eved Nikek Gdulas Rabbi, but the only explanation is if you're going to hold, there's a Machlaikis of Chelk Kavod L'Tam Makam Rav or Ein Chelk Makam Rav, so we must say that opinion holds Ein Chelk Kavod L'Tam Makam Rav. Now let's go back to the Moshiach comes. Moshiach's here. We're at the Sudas of Yasam, and it's time to bench. If we go to David HaMelech, we have a problem. I'm going to go to David HaMelech and say, please bench. David HaMelech is going to say, I'm sorry, I can't bench. I have the Chet of Uriah Chiti. I have a problem. But maybe I have an excuse. Maybe there's an excuse. Because it says that Uriah Chiti was Chaylik Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav. In front of David HaMelech, he called Yoav. Yoav ben Tzruya was the general. David was the king. Yoav was the general. And in front of David, Uriah called Yoav Adoni. Yoav. He called him Adoni. He was Chaylik Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav. So David maybe has an excuse to actually say that it wasn't an Aveira that he killed Uriah Chiti, because Uriah was actually Chaylik Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav, and maybe he was a Meir B'Malchus, and maybe he deserved to die. But we're not sure. David's not sure what the halacha is. Is the halacha Chaylik Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav or Ein Chaylik Kavod L'Tam Arav? Uriah only deserved to die if you're going to hold Ein Chaylik Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav. So Zakri Beinis and Aibshitz, this is how it's going to be Geshmak. We're going to go to Avram Avinu. And we're going to tell Avram Avinu, please bench. Avram Avinu, our father, please bench. Avram Avinu is going to say, I'm sorry, I can't bench. Why? What did the Medrash say? L'fisha yatsa mimeni Yishmael. It means that he's holding that Yishmael didn't do tshuva, because if Yishmael did tshuva, it wouldn't be a problem that he had Yishmael. Did tshuva. Tshuva works. So Avram Avinu is saying, L'fisha yatsa mimeni Yishmael. I can't bench. Hold on. If Avram says, L'fishi Yatsa Mimeni Yishmael, what must be Vashem Be'echas Avram B'Koil? What does it mean? That what? Tell me. That he had a daughter. If we say that Avram Be'echas Avram B'Koil means he had a daughter, it must mean that we hold like Shittas Beis Hillel. So then how could Hashem agree to Moshe Rabbeinu to stay with him and not go back to this tent? Must be that Tzipayir and Yisrael had not yet arrived. Because Moshe wasn't yet Mekayim the mitzvah of Pru Revu. If Yisrael didn't arrive, it means Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah. If Yisrael came la'achar Matan Torah, that goes according to the Shita that a Ben Noach could only be Makriv an Oila. Only Oila, not Shlamim. And Yisrael brought both because he was a Yid. He came la'achar Matan Torah, he was Nisgayer, and Vayikach Yisrael Eilo Zvachim, no problem. So it goes according to the Manda Amar that a Ben Noach could be Makriv only an Oila, not Shlamim. If a Ben Noach can be makrim oila and not shlamim, we can't have tainis on Eiyuv that he brought only oilis. He was only able to bring oilis. So what must we say? That why did Eiyuv get punished? Because he had to be mechaper for the chet of Terach. But Terach was l'shem shemayim niskavein because Megdulas Ha'eved Nikek Gdulas Rabbi. So why was it an Aveira? We must say that Ein Chelk Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav. Ein Chelk Kavod L'Tam B'Makam Arav. I had full right to kill Uriah Chiti. Li Noel Levarech. I'm able to bench, and David HaMelech is going to do Kais Yeshua's Esa. Mizal Zayche Zayin. That's it. Now you can learn it over. I left you copies on purpose. You can learn it a few more times and try to wrap your brain around it. I hope you enjoyed. Atzlacha Rabba.